Prior to this week's episode, Bella Ramsey herself predicted that this episode would split the audience. Now, when you hear things like that as a fan or as a watcher of this show, red flags start to go up. I mean, we all know what's coming if you follow the game story, and that moment at the beginning of the second game split the fandom right down the middle when it happened. So part of me thought, with her saying this, that Season 1 would end where Part 2 began in the games. In all actuality, that's not what happened at all. What did happen is we got one of the best episodes in this season by far. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So it's been a wild 9 weeks. As I've already stated, I've been up and down on this show on a week-to-week basis. Honestly, I saw a lot of things in this first season that I loved. Mainly the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes. So at the very least, they bookended this season with solid storytelling. As for all the episodes in between, it was a mixed bag. And a good portion of those episodes felt like wasted or missed opportunities. Bottom line, to the surprise of no one, this show was at its best when it focused on the Joel and Ellie relationship.
That makes sense.
Anytime it deviated from that relationship for extended periods of time, it actually felt like it halted the momentum of the show. They did a full recap to this season prior to this episode starting. And those 2 DLC episodes, as I like to call them, or side stories, were barely acknowledged in this recap. Maybe a shot or 2 from each one. Because again, as I stated, they are not essential to the main story. And the recap all but confirmed that.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
And again, I'm not saying that those episodes weren't competently made. I'm just saying that they were ultimately unnecessary and wasted a little bit of our time. Time that the relationship of Joel and Ellie could have used, but more on that in a moment. This episode begins with a quick flashback, which is much more narratively pleasing than spending a whole episode to go back and tell us a random story.
No shit.
This is a flashback of Ellie's pregnant mother who gets attacked and bitten by an infected person during the labor process. This is what causes Ellie to get handed over to Marlene and become an orphan, because her mother is executed not long after she gives birth. I almost can't explain to you how this small flashback is infinitely more impactful when fleshing out Ellie than the mall episode would ever be. What happened in the mall episode could have just been mentioned by Ellie like it was mentioned in this episode and left at that.
Then why the didn't you say so?
But to see Ellie come into this world already under duress, already in a life-threatening situation, even as a baby, and to see her instantly experience loss and tragedy, it really does make you feel for the character of Ellie, which unfortunately I haven't really experienced through most of this season. So in that aspect, this scene was very necessary and we should have had more like it. To me, that's how you expand on what we already know in an organic way.
For aggressive expansion.
Back in present day, we have Joel and Ellie searching for the hospital. That will hopefully have someone in it that can study Ellie's immunity and hopefully come up with a cure. Very early on, Joel is having doubts about completing the mission, mostly because he's grown very fond of Ellie, and clearly would just prefer it if they just went off together and lived their lives. Ellie, on the other hand, insists that they finish what they started, because she doesn't want everything they've been through to be all for nothing. And this is another slight issue I have with this season overall. Because of some of that wasted time that I've talked about, I'm not entirely sure they did the best possible job or have given the appropriate amount of time to developing the relationship between Ellie and Joel.
Why?
In fact, I would say the transition from being mere traveling buddies into a father-daughter relationship felt somewhat more abrupt in the show than it does in the game. To me, it felt more natural in the game, and you understand a little bit better why they became so close. I feel like it was a bit glossed over in the show, and I may be exaggerating a little when I say this, but it kind of feels like 1 minute Joel is calling Ellie baggage, and the next he's calling her baby girl. It feels like we were missing part of their story somewhere, and yes, I know there was a time jump, but still.
I don't get it.
I think we needed more small character moments between them sprinkled throughout the season, just to hammer home this whole idea that they are now filling the void in each other's lives. Like in this episode where they show the giraffe scene from the game. It's heartfelt, it's wholesome, and it helps you buy into their relationship as a viewer.
Why do you cry?
To me, we needed more moments like that, and we didn't get them. Eventually, Joel and Ellie get unexpectedly ambushed by the Fireflies. And Joel wakes up from being knocked out, and he's informed that Ellie is being prepped for surgery. And they intend to remove what they need from her in order to find a cure. Unfortunately, this will effectively kill her in the process. Obviously, this doesn't sit well with Joel.
Not up in here! Not up in here!
Who basically goes into this trance-like state and starts killing everyone at the hospital. And I gotta be honest, I think this was easily one of the best scenes in the whole series. It shows us once again the ruthless nature of Joel and who he really is or who he can be, especially when someone is in his way or someone threatens Ellie in any way. You even get a sense that he knows what he's doing is going to cause serious consequences, but he also doesn't care because Ellie means that much to him. I mean, she basically rescued him from his borderline suicidal state. So after he kills basically everyone, even people who are surrendering to him,
If he dies, he dies.
he takes Ellie's unconscious body to the parking garage and is confronted by Marlene, who actually poses a very philosophical question to him. Basically, it comes down to, is one girl's life worth saving if that means humanity as a whole will continue to suffer and maybe even go extinct? And to me, that is interesting to think about. They also present the idea that if Ellie was given a choice, she would do the right thing and have the surgery. Joel, on the other hand, ain't about that life. And he pretty much kills Marlene without hesitation. He then leaves with Ellie and later lies to her about what actually happened in the hospital. The morality duel that's going on at the end of this episode, while a somewhat familiar topic in these types of stories, the reality is that if it's done well, it doesn't really matter if it's kind of cliche.
I like it a lot.
And to me, this moment was handled very well. And it made me wish that they kept a little bit more of this energy that they had in this episode throughout the entire season. Overall, like I said, The Last of Us was very good at times. And I would even call it one of the best video game adaptations during certain episodes. But then at other times it felt like it was getting in its own way and kind of spinning its tires narratively. So yeah, I still feel like it was a bit inconsistent overall, even though it had a strong start and a strong finish. I've mentioned the word balance a few times throughout this season, and that's because I feel like the balance that they established in the game as far as storytelling goes was not adapted to the series all that well. Too many times it felt like they were picking between being a drama, horror, or action story, rather than balancing out each episode with a healthy dose of all three. Story structure was also a huge problem this season. We would oftentimes spend too much time with characters that served no greater purpose. They would also sometimes kill the momentum of a great episode by following it up with an episode that's completely unrelated and making us wait an extra week for a resolution. And that's the type of thing that The Walking Dead used to do when that started to go downhill.
Because it's all part of the plan.
But I will say, when The Last of Us was on, it was really on and I had a good time with it. Moments ripped right out of the game were a dream come true to see in live action. And this whole world looked awesome visually. There were smaller moments and flashbacks that were added that were not in the game that were a welcome addition to the story and really fleshed out this world a bit more. And I know I've said this before, even with some questions still lingering about the casting choices for Ellie and Joel. For the most part, I still enjoyed their moments together, even if I did find Ellie to be a bit annoying at times. But it's their story and the focus should always be on them, and when it did that, The Last of Us shined. I wanted to give this season as a whole a higher rating, but if I'm being honest, it was a flawed but decent experience for me, and that's why I'm going to give season 1 of The Last of Us the Cathouse.
Saved by kitty litter.
Y'all be cool. Right on.